when you see shadow work or you hear people referring to shadow work, just know that what they're talking about is bringing conscious awareness to the parts of yourself that are more hidden, that you don't normally think about. When you think about shadow work, what comes up for you? The chances are, even if you don't know what shadow work is, you're working on it anyway. If you're watching videos like this, then you're probably already in the mindset of personal growth and spiritual growth and self-improvement and biohacking your life to be the best that you can be. The term shadow work comes from Carl Jung. I'm going to read you a quote from Carl Jung. Everyone carries a shadow, and the less it is embodied in the individual's conscious life, the blacker and denser it is. If an inferiority is conscious, one always has the chance to correct it. But if it is repressed and isolated from consciousness, it never gets corrected and is liable to burst forth suddenly in a moment of unawareness. At all counts, it forms an unconscious snag, thwarting our most well-meant intentions. So what do we mean by that? Our shadow are all the parts of ourselves that we really don't want to acknowledge. A lot of us go through our whole lives never acknowledging them. But this is stuff that will come up in your life. It will be behaviors that maybe seem darker or angrier than what you expect of yourself. And sometimes it will come up if you've been drinking or if you're in an anxious state. When you're feeling the more negative emotions, your shadow side is likely to come out. Now, the topic of shadow work involves working on the aspects of ourselves that we really don't want to pay attention to, that we don't like very much. But these are things that will come up, whether you work on them or not. These are the things that come up for people when they are anxious, depressed, sad, when you've been drinking alcohol, if you do recreational drugs, after the come down, when you're feeling like a chemical imbalance. These things can come up for you and you can feel like these are not part of my personality. I don't know why I feel this way. I don't know why I'm snapping at my children or being nasty to my friend or being grumpy at work. These are things that will come up and will come out whether you pay attention to them or not. So it is in your absolute favor to be aware of them, to bring your awareness to it. And that's what Carl Jung is talking about. What he's saying is everybody has a shadow side. And the less aware of it you are, the more embodied in your life these attributes are going to be. So the more you shine a light on something, the less the shadow is. I mean, literally think about how that works. If you have an object in the corner of a dark room with a light just hitting it, you'll have a shadow. If you shine that light directly onto it, the shadow disappears. There can't be a shadow if you flood it with light. And if you think of light as our awareness, our consciousness, if you bring awareness to the parts of yourself that are tricky or struggling or things that you might be less proud of, then you're going to actually heal those parts of yourself, and those parts of you will be less in control of your personality. What Carl Jung is saying is that if you're aware of it, you have the chance to work on it. And this is what we're doing in self-improvement work, right? In spiritual journey or just personal growth, what we're trying to do is become a better version of ourselves all of the time. And this is an intrinsic part of that. Sometimes the term shadow work can seem kind of witchy or dark or uber spiritual or uber woke. And it really doesn't need to be that. It is literally talking about the shadow to your light. So the dark sides of your personality that have to be present because we are a human being. We're not all love and light. The world isn't just rainbows and bubbles and butterflies. It just isn't. The world isn't like that. The universe isn't like that. And we aren't like that. And there is a very real chance when we go through our life thinking everything is rainbows and bubbles and having this forced fake positivity that we actually just become worse people because we're not paying attention to that side of ourselves that we want to convince ourselves and other people doesn't exist. Because it does exist. It's not going anywhere unless you become aware of it, you shine a light on it, and you actively, consciously sit down to work on those aspects of yourself. So in the second part of the quote that I read by Jung, he's talking about exactly this. If you repress your shadow side, if you don't pay attention to it and correct it, it will burst out of you in isolated areas. So you will have those angry outbursts, you will have those moments of depression, you will have that anxiety. It will come out in behaviors that don't seem particularly logical. So it might be an irrational fear that you have, it might be a mood. I talk about shadow work without using the term shadow work very often because I feel like it has strange connotations to people that don't understand where the term comes from. And I truly believe that when you sit and you look at the parts of yourself or parts of your life that you are not happy with, I truly believe that that is warrior work. I believe that if you're doing that, you have such a commitment to progression and growth, and that will be rewarded. But warrior work is hard, it's not supposed to be easy. Another way that your shadow side can come out is in hostile remarks or blurting out things that maybe you weren't aware, you didn't understand why you said that. And also projecting it onto other people. So very often there are people who are sometimes quite narcissistic, who have a very big sense of self and have absolutely no self-awareness, and they will project those darker parts of themselves onto other people. That's a very, very common thing. And most of the time, when somebody is projecting onto you or you are projecting onto someone else, it is something that if you sit and look at the darker parts of yourself, the stuff that you don't want to look at, you'll find a reason for it and you'll be able to work on it and heal it. The interesting thing about shadow work is it's not all negative. It's not all doom and gloom. It's not all the worst parts of you. It can also come out as involuntary bursts of creativity or inspiration, and you don't really know where it's come from. That can also come from your shadow side. Anything in your life, in your psyche that you're not paying attention to, fits into the shadow side of self. Like, honestly, I have done my best shadow work when I have been in the worst times of my life, when I've been going through terrible grief and sudden loss, or periods of my life where I've had very bad health. These are the times when I go inward most deeply because I'm already sort of sitting in that place with that sadness and that darkness. And they're the times I've had most growth in my life because the situation is like a pressure cooker and forces me to look at the things in my life that I don't pay attention to and the parts of me that I don't pay attention to. If you want to grow and be evolved and be spiritually aware and on a path of self-development, becoming aware of all of you, all of your personality, all of your mind, all of your psyche, all of your life is really, really important. It's paramount, actually. You cannot grow if you don't bring awareness to all of you. That is what shadow work is talking about. So shadow work is actually my favorite thing to do. It's the hardest thing to do, but you get the most growth out of it. And that's what makes us evolve and become more emotionally intelligent and more empathetic. And sitting in that space of curiosity with shadow work is really important. Listening to the things other people say about you can sometimes help you direct your awareness to the parts of you that you don't want to pay attention to, because quite often, if somebody tells you that you're needy or that you're being really bickery or you're being nasty or what you said was unnecessary or you're too brash or whatever, quite often that can be a reflection of things in your life, in your psyche, in your personality, and maybe you haven't been paying attention to. And if you have a strong reaction to it when someone says something like that, that can often be an indicator as well. So sometimes it can be worth listening to the things other people are saying about you. With that, I would say it's very important to have complete awareness of self, awareness of other people. And during this, you'll grow the tools and the experience to understand when someone says something about you, is that coming from them? Or is that a true reflection of something in myself that I need to work on? I love talking about this stuff. And if you have anything you want to add for people that have watched this, type in the comments below. Let's talk about it. And don't forget that with shadow work comes a bigger, more wider, more loving, more compassionate accepting of your whole self, which brings us to a space of more self-love and more self-esteem and higher self-worth. It is not about sitting with all of the qualities that you don't like about yourself and berating yourself and making yourself feel small. That's not what it's about at all. It's about looking at those behaviors and those thoughts and those parts of your psyche and embracing them, bringing them in and showing them love. I want to end this video with a quote by Franz. The shadow is not necessarily always an opponent. In fact, he is exactly like any human being with whom one has to get along, sometimes by giving in, sometimes by resisting, sometimes by giving love, whatever the situation requires. The shadow becomes hostile only when he is ignored or misunderstood. So remember, when you're working on bringing awareness to all the parts of you that you weren't aware of before, or need work, or you haven't paid attention to do it with massive amounts of self-care and compassion, just like you would with a child. It's unconditional love. The love you have for yourself should be even more unconditional than the love you have for children, because the love you have for yourself is where everything else stems from. I really hope this has been helpful. Thank you for watching my videos. Please hit the subscribe button so that you can get notifications when I release videos on a Monday, a Wednesday, and a Friday. And I appreciate your time and being here. And as always, guys, have the best day.